Hello, welcome to the sideboard here at the StarCityGames.com Standard Open in Cincinnati, part of the SG Tour, brought to you by Ultimate Guard. Nick Miller alongside longtime Open grinder, winner, Invitational top 8er, Jonathan Jobe. How you doing?
Doing well, man, doing well. Feels good to be back. It's been a while, so happy to be back and doing well.
It's odd to see you out here in the Midwest. You're usually on the West Coast shows back when we had those, but as you said, this is the West Coast destination for you now.
Right, either here or Dallas. I think it's about as close as we get.
But you're in here in town with a friend, and you're both kind of brewed up this mono-red aggro deck, and you're both crushing it so far. You're 6-0, and he's at least 4-1.
He was X-1, 4-1, 5-1 coming into the round.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, so let's get it started, because there are a lot of cards in the standard format right now. I think a lot of people just don't realize how many sets and how many cards are just hiding in these sets that allow a deck like this to kind of pop up.
Right.
But you have cards from all over the place in this deck. We'll start us off with the one drops. We have the Falconwrath Gorger, so we have the vampire thing going on, plus Soulscar Mage here out of Amonkhet.
Right, yeah, no, basically, Jackal Pup with no drawback. We've had the rare, very rare one time, it happened one time with the fun interaction of, I had one in play, and I discarded another one to Hazoret, and I got to Madness, that bad boy. That was kind of just fun and interesting. And the Soulscar Mage was actually one of those things that we found to be really good with a lot of Selfless Spirits running around. Because the damage returns to the -1/-1 counters, so Selfless Spirit doesn't save those creatures, so it makes combat math really interesting with the monument decks. When they go to block and things like that, if you actually put counters, they don't get to trade properly the way they were thinking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going along with Indestructible right now. The gods, plus we have, Avacyn, all these other cards floating around where this could be relevant. You have your own god yourself, as you mentioned, Hazoret here, but you also get to combine Soulscar Mage with your removal spells, Magnum Spray and Incendiary Flow, trading up one more step.
Actually, Soulscar Mage is really cool with the fact that it goes one step further that it actually says if a source would deal damage. So it actually, with Glorybringer and with Chandra as well, so that you can kill like opposing Hazorets or things of that nature that have 4 toughness. So you can make them have negative counters on them. It's also really cool with the fact that if they do play something that's necessarily bigger than your guys, you get to shrink them, so that they don't necessarily, then all of a sudden they're not as big of a threat to deal with.
Right, I think a lot of people overlook this card, its applications, just being, some extra text on a one drop, but there's a lot of things going on in this deck in specific that really combine allow you trade in combat or just kill creatures that, you shouldn't be killing.
Absolutely, a lot of things that they think that are going to turn into trades, like, oh yeah, they'll just kill this guy, and all of a sudden their guy just becomes, an 0-1. And they're like, oh, that's not what I was thinking was going to happen there.
Some minor interactions here going along. Magma Spray, if you target a creature, it will be exiled.
Correct.
Incendiary Flow, if you target it, will still go to the graveyard if you have the Soulscar Mage in play, because it's replacing with -1/-1 counters. Right. And Magma Spray has the specific line if it would die, not if it was damaged.
Right, where Incendiary Flow has to actually deal the damage.
We had both interactions show up on camera this round, so it can be a little confusing there.
Right.
Moving on, we have your 2-drop here of choice, Kari Zev. It's been a while since this creature saw some play, but it's your only real 2-drop.
The best 2-drop is actually, I apologize, Nick, is definitely Earthbreaker. This guy has been a beast.
I got to play with this card in Cube. Very good there. I imagine it's solid here.
Oh yeah, no, it's absolutely great. Once again, it does funny things with combat where all of a sudden somebody can't block. Even just the fact that you have to go 1-drop, and then if they play a blocker, and you're like, no sir, take 4 instead. And then if they block it, coming back on the back half, then all of a sudden it's a 4/4 that says things can't block that cost 4 or less. It's just been great.
Yeah, you don't have a problem with this creature dying, because this deck, unlike a lot of mono red decks, doesn't have a lot of late game, but you, along with Glorybringer, Reality Smasher here, a lot of deserts that can have extra value, you're going to get up to 6 lands to be able to bring this back as a closer.
Absolutely. Especially with the mana ability on Chandra, that's another one big one that helps you get there.
All right, 3 drops here. We're just going along with the haste theme. We have Eldrazi Obligator, which, haste creature with a little upside in the late game, but also Amonkhet Crasher.
You guys have been great
going along with this unblockable theme, as long with your 2-drop.
Yeah, you can't block, you can't win against me. If I've just had plenty of time, especially playing against like Blue-White Monument or the Team Energy deck, where they don't have a 2-drop and then they play a 3-drop, and I went 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, and it's 7 you on 3, and so basically I've dealt them 10 damage, and they haven't had a chance to block yet.
Yeah, and there are not a lot of sweepers being main decked right now either.
Correct.
A lot of people looked at Hour of Devastation as a card that could slot into these control decks, but with this curve, I don't think you care about Hour of Devastation. Yeah. All right, then we go up the curve even more when we mentioned Glorybringer, Reality Smasher as your top end. You have these Hazoret and Thought-Knot Seer floating around in the mid game. With all these deserts, you don't have a problem playing these really good Eldrazi cards.
Yeah, the red desert has just been it's basically the icing on the cake. When we kind of thought about the deck and we started it, it took me, I'll be honest, my buddies built it, a guy named Gene Brumby who's from New Zealand, we're calling this Kiwi Red, and my best friend Nick Glassen. They kind of built the deck, and I was a little bit sold, and then they showed me that the new deserts could be casting Eldrazi's. And when I saw that, I was like, this is something that I want to be doing.
Right.
The red normally can just have that little point in it where it stumbles on 3 or 4, but if on turn 4 I get to look at your hand and choose your best card that's going to be good against me, now we're talking some business.
That's something all aggressive players want in their deck, and to have that, you can just kind of pick the removal spell, pick their sweeper, Ishkana, things like that.
Ishkana, and it comes on a 4/4 body. Yeah, it is all one of these, all the great things.
And then as you mentioned, Chandra here, just a great value planeswalker, clears out a blocker, gets you extra cards.
Does everything that you want to be. Pretty much. Any planeswalker that costs 4, has 4 abilities, tends to be good in Magic, I've heard.
So is this deck capable of killing very early? Because it looks like a late game red deck, but you kind of just have hits that keep on coming.
Basically what the deck kind of does is it gets a lot of damage in early, and then it just leans on you. It doesn't necessarily, overpower and continue to do all these things, but it has just enough in it with the deserts. Even just the normal desert that comes into play and pings them has been great. I got to kill Saheeli with it earlier, which was tons of fun. And then you basically, all you need is a lot of times when they're turning around on turn 4, they're at 10 or less. And so from that point on, you don't really need a lot to go from there. One of the big things that we did was we originally started out with a Braid in the main, and because we thought this was going to be new hotness, everyone's going to be playing this really good, the artifact and stuff like that. And we realized that Incendiary Flow, we actually needed the little bit of extra to go to the face.
One thing, did you think about Shock over Magma Spray in terms of having that extra reach?
We thought about it, and it kind of went back and forth. Right now we're sticking with the Magma Spray because we weren't sure, but yeah, no, it's been great.
All right, one last thing, let's touch on the deserts a little more, because you just have the common desert that's pinging them, so that's an extra point of damage just out of nowhere. We have to mention that the new desert with sorcery, not sorcery speed, deal 2. A lot of people are getting tripped up by this card.
Yep.
Only 2 of them aren't sorcery speed.
Correct.
Red one is 1, so now you just kind of get to sit back with a removal spell, sit back, deal them damage, and you have more than just the red mana producing deserts that you can sacrifice to them.
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's a lot of times people don't even realize what's going on. Like, they'll think that they stabilize or something like that because I don't have a lot of gas left, and I'll have 2 desert, or I'll have 8 desert in play, and they'll be at 5 or something, and I'll play the common desert, ping them for 1, and just be like, go, and they're like, oh, this is going to be bad. Yeah, you just like shoot you.
Not bad when your lands are just dealing them damage.
Right.
All right, so we'll move on to the sideboard here. You have kind of more of the same here, just filling in where you need to fill in.
Pretty much.
You have your extra Eldrazi, your extra Glorybringer, extra Chandra, your extra removal spells, but we'll touch on some of the other cards here because we have a Sweltering Suns, and we have 2, I like this card quite a bit, the Invigorated Rampage. Being able to spread out your pump seems very powerful.
Yeah, no, this is one of the, once again I said his name before, Gene Brumby from New Zealand. This was one of the things that he was very insistent that we had this in the deck, and it's just been great today. With obviously the Monument decks are super popular, and then on top of it with the rise again of Temur Energy, the Whirl of Virtuosos making 1/1 flyers, they tend to think that they're making these favorable blocks, or they do things like leave Planeswalkers open, which you saw happen in my last match, where he puts a Chandra on 5, and I don't have any power in play, and then all of a sudden I come in with a 2/1 haster, and I get to kill it. And all their game plan of, oh man, I was going to use that for damage or mana, or something like that, all of a sudden turns real dramatically.
Yeah, having that extra damage out of nowhere, having the spreadable damage against the Monument decks, seems very good. And then rounding out the deck, you have your Abrades, which you said you didn't want in the main deck because you wanted the extra reach.
Correct.
And then 2, Handwear Garrisons. You don't have the battlements running around in here like the Mono Red Eldrazi decks. Yep. You just have extra threats.
Yeah, no, they're just good when you want to go wider. Like I said, against the token decks, or sometimes they're a little bit better against the mid-rangey stuff. When you just want to be able to go wider and tax because they're going to have to bring in a bunch of early removals, like Magma Sprays, Abrades, whatever they have in the early game. And so if they have to use that on your early stuff, turns of 1s, 2s, to deal with your Vulcan Wraths, your Kari Zevs, your Earthquakers, and then you have a Hanwha Garrison on 3. It's just great. It's just been, it's a lot better a lot of times than the guys, the SCGCIN Obligator. He was in there because when we were testing on Moto, we saw that ramp deck start to become real popular. And let me tell you, there's no more fun in the world than taking somebody to a log and smashing them in the face with it. And they just don't see it out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So
10 damage out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So you're 6-0 with the deck. Is there anything, you didn't have a lot of testing with the deck pre-tournament. Now that you got 6 rounds under your belt with it, anything you're looking to kind of switch up, or are you happy with what you got?
Honestly, I've been really, really, really happy with the build as it is so far. I think the numbers are pretty dang solid. The only thing that I possibly was going back and forth on was whether or not the Hanwha Garrison should be main over I can't say the card, the Obligator. Just mainly because I thought that the ramp decks might be a little bit more popular than the Team Energy, mainly because it's the first weekend, people like to try new stuff and stuff like that. And but I don't know. Other than that, I think the build is actually really, really solid. Awesome.
Well, I'm glad you're doing well with it. I'm excited to see Mono Red back in the fold. It's been a while. People kind of got sick of it because it dominated a couple Pro Tours, but now here we are. If you want to play an aggressive deck, it is on the table. So, Jonathan, thanks for joining me here in the sideboard. Stay tuned to StarCityGames.com all weekend long for the action here in Cincinnati.